So I'm using one of my secret colors here. It's not so secret, but it's called Lead Tin Yellow Light.
Yeah.
And it's a historical pigment. Vermeer used it a lot.
Meet my friend, Teresa Oaxaca. Teresa, welcome.
Hi, Eric. Thank you for having me on.
Oh, we're very excited. I love everything about you, and I want to find out what you're going to do today for us.
Well, today I have a portrait commission that has a interesting story. It was started right when the pandemic came out, and it's of a family of a woman who I met at your conference in Williamsburg. But I'm going to be showing the finishing layers, which is something that people almost never see. So there's going to be glazing, impasto, scumbling, and different kinds of flesh tone layering techniques that you might find interesting in different mediums, not just in oil.
Absolutely. I'm looking forward to it. I want to show everybody some of your work. I'm just going to go and pull some things out. And you have developed your own unique theme and unique style. It's very distinctive. Anytime I see any of your work, I absolutely know it's a Teresa piece. And so lots and lots of lace and just absolutely beautiful things, rich, beautiful things.
I like rich color.
Rich color. I had not seen. I had not seen your work in person until you came to the FACE conference, and of course we have an auction and show, and you brought these giant paintings. They must have been 6 foot tall. They were absolutely stunning, compelling. They just pull you in. So very exciting work.
Thank you, Eric. I'm a bit like the goldfish. I just moved to encompass the whole environment. So all my paintings are really big. Those are small paintings for me.
Yeah. Now, I would be remiss if I didn't ask you about your style, because you've kind of developed a style all your own. You're like a fashionista. You have, you should have your own clothing lines, because you could set a trend.
I should. I was going to wear red for you today. And while I was setting up my palette, I got green all over it. So now I'm in gray, and I like clothing that reflects my artistic aesthetic. So I like the painting world and my world to mesh together seamlessly.
Well, it's very much it's kind of a storybook theme, and I really love that. Why don't we get started? Let's see you do some glazing. The glazing, Teresa, is one of the topics I hear constantly. People say, tell me how to do glazing. I really need to understand this more. And so I think we're excited about it. I will also mention that there are a lot of people who are watching today who are at very beginning stages. And so some of them don't even know what the term glazing is. They don't know necessarily about underpaintings and layering and so on. So maybe you could kind of touch on some of that as we're going through this process. And wow, that's just beautiful.
Oh, thank you.
All right. I'm going to turn it over to you.
All right. Well, I'd be happy to talk about those things, Eric. So this is almost going to be the final pass of a portrait commission I've been working on. And so this infant here, she is going to be getting her final expression and all the emotion. So this is a little bit of a roughed in stage. I've already done a lot of what I call color weaving. So you can see around her dress, there's not just white, there are blues in the cool shadows, there are yellows in the shadows. The whites have already been laid on with Impasto Medium and pure lead white. And so it's time for the face to really get its day in the sun. And of course, when someone, hires you to do a portrait commission of a loved one, that's the most important part of the painting. So that is kind of why I leave it to the last moment like this. All right.
Okay. So I'm curious, you said, I want to catch you on a couple terms for the people who are watching who might not know. You said you used an Impasto Medium. Right. So that is designed to get the paint thicker?
That's right. An Impasto Medium, you can see it here in this blob. This is not paint. This is actually a little bit of chalk and some bodied oil. So I paint with linseed oil. And so this is going to make the paint just stand up.
So that looks like the Rubelov Venetian. Is that what it is?
That's exactly what it is. How did you know?
I just know these things.
You do. It's right. It's the Rublev Venetian. I'm going to be using that one today. They have so many wonderful pigments to choose from, but I find that this one's going to be good for the glazing that I'm doing right now. So I'm mixing it in with a flesh color and shadow mixture, which is made up.
And does that, because it's got a little, looks like opacity to it, does that change the color at all?
I find it doesn't. I find it's completely transparent. Yeah, that is important. You don't want it to change the color, and I find that it doesn't. So I'm just gonna like, I call it sneaking it in. Whenever I put a color at a rendering stage, I'm really careful to make sure that I'm not changing the value any more than it has to be changed. And so I'm just, with a very long rigger brush, which they use to paint the sides of cars, I hear, I am sneaking in some warm transparent like red oxide. So that's another color I use for glazing. I use a lot of transparent colors. They just come that way out of the tube. And
now, would you, before you go too far on this, will you tell us what you're going to try and accomplish on painting this face? What, as you look at it, what are you saying it needs?
It needs the soul of the person in it. So
all right. How do you do that?
I know. How do you do that? It has the pigment, it has the value structure. It has all those beginning lay-in techniques that I'm sure a lot of the viewers are familiar with. And this is the kind of part where I look at the whole and I try to bring out maybe the spirit or the essence of the person. I like to go a little bit into my subconscious and go with the flow and see where that brings me. But I find just picking an area to work on, so in this case, the left eye, and adding detail and really observing color changes and form changes, I start to get closer to my goal.
You've been getting a lot of solitary time. And so you mentioned before we went on the broadcast, you've really had a chance to get a lot of painting done.
I have. I've done one of my life goals, which is to stretch some 10-foot canvases and begin some very large narrative works. And I've stretched about 4 of them so far, and then I have a whole backlog of others I want to do. And yeah, and then I've just been working on commissions and studies and doing a little bit of online teaching. And one of the great things about teaching from the studio is that you can just teach from your studio paintings. So it's just been one seamless painting journey, which has been a lot of fun.
Now, will you talk to me about transitions? Because I'm looking at this painting. I see you're really good at that. Talk about the transition between light and shadow.
Absolutely. So I am painting from a Renaissance to kind of Baroque 19th century lineage. And so they used to put cool colors between the lights and the darks. And so you can see evidence of this sort of verdaccio technique in a lot of Michelangelo or Da Vinci paintings. It was kind of like a green earth. So you can see it a lot of times. I will put some blue or green between my light and shadow. In the 19th century, it seems like they went a little more fun. So if you look at Sorolla or Sargent, you see purples and alizarins, as well as the blues and the greens. And I think it's just ways of interpreting the world in a fun way that keeps painting fun and trying to further capture the soul of man or the world in front of you. And I think you can kind of get away with any transition color you want as long as you obey value structure. And so that's the idea, that as the form turns, like for example, here on the forehead, the baby's forehead is light, but it's going to have to start meeting this dark shadow value over here. And so I'm going to have to come up with several transition colors.
Well, one of the things we've talked about in the past and is that oftentimes there's the most chroma at that point of transition as well. So if you look at the baby's cheek, for instance, where you're going from light to dark, there's you go from light into a high chroma color, and then into the blue.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And it's tricky because as you darken colors, they want to get higher chroma because most pigments exist at a mid range or a darker range. And as we know, to lighten a color, you often have to throw in white or some kind of very pale yellow. And so that's a struggle, I think, with all mediums, not just with oil. But luckily, you can do things like glazing and layering, and these are ways to control not just the texture, but you can control the vivacity or the chroma of colors this way.
Hello, Pakistan. Hello, Alberta, and Ontario, and Brazil. So what kind of brush are you using? It looks like a very soft brush.
It's absolutely the opposite. This happens to be a number 2 Rosemary & Co. series 3077, and this is a long, round economy hog. So it's a very rough hog bristle, but it's so small. And I have a little bit of a pouncing technique. I actually poke the surface. I don't always drag the paint. Can
you show us that poking?
Yeah. Well, here's the brush. Let me see. Here's the brush. It's too close.
Yeah, too close.
Okay, this is it.
Your hand is blocking, so it's hard to see it there.
I'm poking.
Okay, so just kind of dabbing paint.
Yeah, I ram into the canvas than pull away from it with each stroke, and that helps me get this blending. I could use a very fine sable, and I do have a few red sables in my hand at the moment, but for some reason, maybe it's the thickness of my paint, I just find that the stiff bristle delivers the paint the best way.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is not a fancy brush by any means, and I often go through a lot of them. So if I find them, I buy a dozen because I know they're going to get shorter and shorter. But they're very nice for this layer, this approach. And
now, when you did your first layer of this painting, was it simply a single color to kind of get in your drawing? How do you do it?
I began with a raw umber block-in. I drew with raw umber using a bristle brush, and I blocked in the shadows and the lights. So that's another old master technique.
Right.
And then I proceeded to model the lights into the shadows, and I hinted at a limited number of cools. And then I went and mostly dealt with the rest of the picture because the face is going to be made up of colors that are reflecting from the surroundings. And in my work, I tend to employ a lot of surroundings. And so I almost have still lifes that have people in them rather than the other way around. So
did you originally pose this and photograph it? What was your source?
My source was interesting. We began this during coronavirus. And so instead of visiting Alabama as I was supposed to do in March, we did a Skype photo shoot where I directed.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, how creative.
She did. She had a good camera, and she put everything where I told her. We took several different photos, and you can't tell now, but there's some dogs and birds in this composition which are not currently existing. They're posthumous portraits, and so I used a lot of different references to pull this together. And the face here of the baby actually, it's been a little bit more of an indirect approach because I originally painted it with a completely different expression, and after some thought and consideration, my client wanted more of a smiling face, and so I changed the face completely, which is something that happens a lot in commission work. So it's not always a direct from start to finish, like you would see in a demo. Sometimes
Right.
the road is a little turning. So this face here has gone through a little bit of work already.
Terrific.
So complicated, but yeah, it's I think the more work you put into things, sometimes the more beauty that is shown. I like a little bit of brushwork showing in my pieces. So
Uh-huh.
quite happy.
Hello, India, and hello, Netherlands. Couple people from India.
Hello.
UAE, welcome. Switzerland, Lucerne. Welcome, Barbara. Thailand, Cumbria, United Kingdom, Pakistan. We're having a lot of fun, Teresa, getting the world together every day at lunchtime.
Yes.
At New York time, lunchtime, and painting and having fun together.
I stay up very late working, so your broadcast is often what wakes me up in the morning. I tune in and I clear my thoughts, so I quite enjoy your broadcasts.
Thank you. I quite enjoy it too. It's fun to do it.
I think the spirit of enjoying the art and sharing is very important. I like what you said about we're in this together and let's make some art. I think that's a great message to put out.
What's been really wonderful about this, Teresa, is that first off, we're hearing from 40, 50 countries. They're sharing it with their friends, and when they share it, all of a sudden other people discover it. But the best part is I've heard from people who say, I saw this on somebody's feed. I watched it. I started watching it more. It gave me the courage to learn how to paint. And then they've been watching and painting along. I've had people say they're picking up a paintbrush after, they used to do it when they were young, but they haven't done it their whole life. And now they're picking up a paintbrush. I love hearing those stories. If you have a comment like that, put it in the comments section. We love to hear your stories. But it's nice to see people finding art, discovering art. I think this is so important. Our world needs more art, and we don't have it in our schools here in America anymore much. So we have some, fortunately, but not enough.
It takes a lot of courage to pick up a paintbrush and say something with it too. It's not the easiest thing.
No, but you're having fun learning.
That's right. That's the key. If you're having fun, you're going to learn faster.
What is your lighting setup for working at night? She said daylight bulbs interfere with sleep.
Oh, well, that's why I work at night, though. I am intentionally interfering with my sleep. but yes, she's right. And I do use daylight bulbs. I have 2 or 3 LED banks that I can set the temperature. And most painters will say set it to 5,600 Kelvin.
Yeah.
And that's mostly what I do. And you do get better light during the day. So when I was less comfortable with working at night from photos, I used to just work from life completely. That's how I was trained. So I didn't touch a photo for the first 6 years of my art.
And that's a great training, because then once you do use photos, you'll be able to understand what the form and color really is.
Yeah, and you'll be able to appreciate the model not moving. But I would say look at your colors in the daylight, because as good as daylight bulbs are, they're still not the same as real light.
Yeah. The other thing that can happen, and everybody needs to be careful about this, and I say this from personal experience, you can have too much light. And if you have too much light when you paint, you don't realize it, but you're painting a darker painting.
This I have not heard of. This is interesting.
Yeah. So it's very important to kind of take your painting outdoors once in a while and compare it to what you've been seeing on your easel to make sure that you're nailing it. I used to have this big flood light of daylight bulbs right over my easel. And I did these, what I thought were wonderful paintings. And then when I would hang them outside or hang them in the house, they were really, really dark. And so I realized by cutting back about 50% of the light, I was actually making my paintings brighter.
I see. Yeah, I'm familiar with people who work in artificial light. And if you don't have it calibrated to that 5,600 Kelvin, you run the risk of not seeing certain colors in the spectrum. And then you can end up with a purple person or an orange person because you're not seeing the blues or the greens or the reds, for example, in their entirety. That's great advice. I definitely would say to look at things in many different light sources. I have daylight streaming in through my windows. Then I have the 5,600 Kelvin banks, and then I have just a few what I call yellow lights, just kind of normal, take them out of the box.
So I discovered something recently. I just had cataract surgery, and I didn't realize how bad my color had become. It creeps up on you gradually. My wife used to say, your paintings are too yellow. And now I'm seeing colors I don't think I've seen in 20 or 30 years.
Oh, that's remarkable. What colors do you see better now?
Lavenders and blues. Reds are more vibrant. All colors are more vibrant, but everything was kind of grayed down and muddy. And now I have a mountain in my distance that, it used to look like it was kind of gray-green. Now it looks, lavender and blue.
Fantastic. Do you appreciate different kinds of painting now, or is your appreciation similar to before the surgery?
Well, my tendency is to want to use more color now because I want to celebrate the fact that I have color back in my life.
Yes, that's fantastic. Yeah, I think it's worth investigating color as an artist. I do believe in a limited palette, but I think that it's nice every once in a while to get outside your color box. And recently I got into cobalt teals, so I have a few turquoises on my palette now. And
nice.
I start to use, as you can see in this portrait, I start to use more turquoise, and I'm sure I could have mixed it before, but it just didn't occur to me because it wasn't on my palette.
Teresa, when you're done with this passage, if you'll just pull your palette up and show it to everybody again, that'll be a good thing.
Absolutely, yeah, and I'll pull back a little so you can see my big.
Yeah. I think people would like to actually Oh, good, yeah.
It's kind of a lot of colors. In my defense, I do these paintings that have the full spectrum of color to begin with because I paint a lot of flowers and antiques. And so I don't always use every color on my palette in every picture, but I have it there just in case. And I work on a few paintings a day. And so it helps me to just have all my colors ready to go. And so this is my not so limited palette.
Why don't you switch to the other camera so everybody, because we had a lot of people who tuned in late, so everybody can get a feel for the full composition.
Absolutely.
Our guest today is Teresa Oaxaca. Hi, Teresa.
Hi.
Yeah, that's just beautiful.
Thank you.
All right, now let's get back to work.
Okay.
I'll crack that whip.
Thank you.
Can you get us a close-up zoom in again? Great, thank you. If you guys are enjoying this, please share it and hit the like button or a heart or something that helps. Your palette, somebody says, Lucien says your palette is a work of art too. It really is.
Oh, thank you, Lucien. So I'm using one of my secret colors here. It's not so secret, but it's called Lead Tin Yellow Light.
Yeah.
And it's a historical pigment. Vermeer used it a lot. And I find it's great for flesh color because it gets you a really light, off, kind of buff yellow. And then you can just mix a little bit of vermilion or cadmium, red or orange into it. And then you get a very delicate shade of pink or orange or brown. And you can also use it to paint white drapery. I paint a lot of antique horsehair wigs because I do Rococo inspired headpieces on some of my models. And so this is one of my favorite secret colors.
You must love going into antique stores and finding props.
I am not allowed anymore into antique stores. I have filled up my environment with props. And so I did enjoy it very much. And I collected a lot of dolls and a lot of tea sets and things like that. But I'm under strict orders to only sell paintings and not bring in stuff to my studio.
Have you seen Sherry Ross's doll collection?
She actually invited me to visit her and have team see it, and I haven't made it yet. But I hear that it's really, really nice, and we have some doll interests in common. actually.
Yeah, well, I have no idea how many she has now, but I did a photo shoot at their house of the art collection, and there were unbelievable amounts of beautiful dolls everywhere.
Wow. I'm in that art collection, and they have a painting of mine that has many dolls in it. So I appreciate a collector who collects dolls.
I love your work. I need to get one of your pieces one of these days.
Oh, thank you. I like when people tell me that they like the dolls, because I get just as many people telling me I should stop painting the dolls.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And I think sometimes what to do, but I think it's always good to hold true to your own vision.
Oh, yeah. Well, you know, for some people, dolls are like clowns, right? Some people love clowns and some people think they're creepy.
That's right.
That's probably from what was that movie with Freddie in it?
Yeah, I've always seen the Pierrot, the kind of the romantic European carnival clowns. So the ones I saw were very sophisticated. So I never really watched that much horror growing up. So I had to go do a little bit of research to see what I was maybe inflicting on people when I exhibited paintings of clowns. I went through a clown phase for a few years.
This is fun to see you paint again. We saw you paint at the FACE conference, and it's just nice to watch how people do things. Everybody's got a little different approach.
Yes, I do enjoy that. My approach is a little bit subconscious. I kind of go after things in a meandering way, and I eventually reach the point where I think the painting should be. I have a lot of direction at the beginning. I'm plotting out the composition and getting in the major shapes, but at this stage, I'm almost going on autopilot or subconsciousness, and I think it's because some people lack a little bit of confidence, and if you turn off the prefrontal cortex, your autopilot, your wisdom of painting over the years is better and stronger than the voice that's telling you it's not good enough. So that might be why I do that. But it seems to work. So this is how I finish things.
So what are you going to do with these big 10-footers?
I'm going to paint them. I'm going to film portions of the process and the inspiration, the locations. I've been doing a little bit of long distance running because it's the only way I get out otherwise at this time of the pandemic. And so I have been incorporating landscape for the first time into my work.
Oh, how fun. So you're just learning landscape painting, or did you learn it in school?
We didn't learn it in school, but we learned a lot of fundamentals that, could translate to landscape painting. And so I've done a few of them, but I've always been drawn to the human form and to still life. And so
I'll tell you what, I'm going to make you my guest at Plein Air Live, which is coming up in April. If you can't make the date, you can watch replays. But I've got right now 30 of the best landscape painters in the world. And of course, there will be more. And so I'm going to buy you a ticket.
Thank you, Eric. That is exactly what I need. I was thinking, if I get into this landscape thing, someday I can attend Plein Air Live. I'm in trouble. I have a painting with sharks. I have a painting with a seascape. And then I have weird old trees that I find in the woods and visit at different seasons. And then try to incorporate into my big narrative. So I need all the help I can get.
If you want to have the landscape experience of your life, and I am not over exaggerating, come up to the Adirondacks in June, where, assuming we're all allowed to be free, I have this year will be the 10-year anniversary of my retreat there, and I'll have about 150 of us. We go out painting in the Adirondack landscapes every day, which are stunning, and you get to set up next to others, some who are experienced, some who are beginners, and everybody just kind of hangs out, has fun, paints, and then we play music at night, we sing, we do portraits at night, we eat together, and it's a fabulous experience because, Charlie Hunter, who's probably watching, Charlie Hunter came, he wanted to learn about the plein air world because he wanted to kind of get himself exposed. And he got so exposed to it and became very popular in that week that he kind of went out and started the plein air circuit, and it changed him forever. So I'm not saying that's what you're going to do, but it's a great way to get a lot of different approaches on landscape painting.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think a lot of people will be turning to landscape as, the lockdown continues. It seems like a fantastic way to get out and socialize. If not just enjoy the fresh air and have an experience. That sounds amazing.
A lot of fun. I really missed it last year, and I miss being together with everybody. We all become very good friends.
Oh, that sounds wonderful. Yeah, sometimes I think I've become too soft as a studio painter. I need to have my routine the same every day I know where my brushes are. I know what temperature it's going to be. I know where the tea maker is. But it sounds like a different experience being out there.
Well, I'm excited to see you do landscape, because with your application of color, you're going to see things the rest of us don't see. It's going to be exciting.
Thank you. I've already been collecting strange plants and trees and things that have character. And I've been making studies of them and saving up images of them to incorporate them. So they'll find their way in for sure.
Terrific.
So here I am just softening an edge. The baby's wearing a bow, and I thought that the edge was just a little bit too hard. And so even though I try to soften edges as I go, I have a tendency to paint sharp edges, which is rather common. I have taught a lot of workshops around the world, and I think about 95% of the population put sharp edges. Every once in a while, you find someone who naturally does soft ones. But this is something I'm always fighting. And at this layer, there's no excuse to have unnecessary sharp edges. And so
will you touch on that for everybody's benefit, why edges matter and how they draw the eye and so on?
Mm-hmm. A sharp edge, which can be accomplished with either a lot of contrast, such as a white against a darker color, or with an impasto, where I've just put in a huge chunk of lead white onto my figure here. I love this part at the end. You can just impasto in white like that and leave it, and it gives texture, and that's a sharp edge for sure. That's going to just draw the viewer's eye to areas you want them to see. It also imitates the way that the human eye works, or the camera lens works, which is another type of eye. We're going to find one spot in the distance to focus on. In a portrait, unlike a landscape, you don't have miles and miles of vista, right? You just have maybe a foot or two of space. And
right.
The more space you can get in a portrait, the more beautiful. So a lot of times people don't know what they're responding to, but when they see paintings that they just love, often it's the space that the artist has created the illusion of that they are in love with. And edges will get you that.
Hello, London. Hello, Ireland. Welcome. If you folks who are watching, if you would hit the share button, that will really help other people discover this. I think everybody needs to see Teresa. If you're on YouTube, hit the subscribe button and hit that little bell that'll give you notifications. And by the way, everybody, all of these broadcasts, today is day 331, and we do it twice a day, once at noon, and then we do a different one at 3 p.m. All of these broadcasts are available on YouTube if you subscribe. So just go to YouTube, look up Streamline Art, and then hit subscribe. I think Plein Air Live is going to be a lot of fun. We have people, last 3 weeks ago, we had Watercolor Live. We had the world's largest audience of watercolor at a conference, and we had 40 different countries attending. So Plein Air Live is probably going to end up beating that. So it'll be interesting because there's a huge interest in landscape painting and a huge interest in going outdoors because it's so social and you get to be out in nature and meet a lot of friends. It's kind of fun. Of course, I would say that because of my involvement with it.
Oh, it definitely is a lot of fun. I used to meet friends on the National Mall here in DC, which is this really long grassy stroll you can take between the monuments, and we just sit outside and draw all day, about once a week, just to get some social time. And it made all the difference between feeling cooped up and isolated and social and creative.
Yeah, it's fun. Do you ever get to Austin, Texas?
I would love to come to Austin. I have only been to San Antonio, and I used to live in El Paso, Texas. So
you did? Okay.
I grew up in Texas for about 2 years.
Well, if you ever make it, maybe someday we'll do a project together. But if you ever come, I've got a portrait collection of I'd say about 26 or 30 portraits by the world's leading portrait artists, and including some that are gone now, like Nelson Shanks. Talk about a man who knows how to put color in paintings.
Indeed.
So I'd love to share that with you and show it to you.
Oh, I would love to see that. Yeah, seeing art in person, there's just nothing like it.
I commissioned them for the magazine, for my article in the magazine, and it's going to be fun to see it. Well, I started when I was 50 years old, so there's 20 plus years of not 20, 15 plus years of paintings.
Wow. So what was it like to sit for Nelson Shanks?
Well, Nelson was a 4-day sitting.
Okay.
It was 4 half days. The stories were remarkable because he's telling, he was very close friends with Princess Diana. And so he's getting into a lot of depth in the stories of the different people he's painted, Diana and Pavarotti. And, it's really amazing the life that he led. And, I learned a lot about everything, learned a lot about painting, and we became really great friends. It was really a tragedy to see him go.
Oh, indeed.
He called me about, a week before he passed.
Wow. Did you sit for him at his house?
No, I sat in the Robert Henry studio in New York, right next to the National Arts Club, which was his studio in New York for many years. And sadly, as he started realizing that his life was coming to an end, he had to move out of that studio. And he also has a fabulous studio at his home outside of Philadelphia. And his wife hosted me there, wife and son, Alex, hosted me and my daughter there, and we got a chance to see their personal collection. Just unbelievable. He had beautiful Renaissance era paintings, plus his own paintings, his studio. I told his wife that they need to make a museum out of that studio someday.
Yeah, I think it rivals the Frick collection.
Oh, it does. I mean, he was so smart in the way he collected. And
they let you sit in the chairs too.
Yeah. Yeah, all the furniture is, hundreds of years old. And I talked with his wife about that, and she said, he would, anytime he'd get a good commission, he'd spend money on fantastic art from auctions over many, many years. And eventually, that it turned out to be one of the most beautiful collections in the world.
Yeah. That's what's so fascinating about art, is that it just endures for so many centuries if it's good, and it's sometimes unreproducible. That's one of the beautiful things I think about being an artist.
Yeah, that's something I've not really been able to do. I've got a big collection, but most of it is because I've traded paintings with artists, or they've given me paintings, or I've got a few that I've purchased from time to time, but I haven't been able to purchase the antique paintings like I'd like to. But one day I'm going to build I have a plan to build 2 museums. It'll be a collective museum. One is going to be a museum on plein air painting, and then the other is going to be a museum on academic realism, because, the 2 areas the magazines focus on.
Yeah.
And so I had somebody offer they offered to donate a piece of property actually outside of Washington, D.C.
Oh, fantastic.
But I turned it down because it was a rural area, touristy area, but rural. I need to be in a big city. Otherwise, there's no use in having it if people can't see it.
I see.
So all I need is a donor who wants to put their name on a museum, and we'll get it done.
Yeah. I love museums. That's one of the things I miss is that I used to be able to go in and see paintings all the time.
I know.
Yeah. So here I'm rounding out the cheeks more. I think with you can call this big four modeling or creating depth. I do believe that part of the joy of portraiture is seeing an illusion of 3 dimensions, and so I'm constantly chasing it. And with my style, at least, I get the form and I get the drawing right almost at the last stroke, and so I'm still chasing it right now.
And you're not using a reference at this point, are you?
I am. I have one
okay.
in front of me. Yeah. I am almost always using a reference. The only time I don't use a reference is if I'm making up something out of my head, which I'm starting to do more with the incorporation of landscape. But I feel with portraiture, it's very hard for me to make up likenesses out of my head. And so
yeah,
spent time or talked to the person or the family helps. And that definitely is in my head. But I do need some kind of a structure or reference to look at for this kind of detailed work.
Somebody asked, do you do a lot of lace, do you not?
I have some lace. Yeah, I do a lot of fabrics. I do. I have a big wardrobe of costumes almost, and I try to incorporate them when I can.
So if you did my portrait, would you put me in a costume?
Well, that would be fun. I would always try that. That's my first thing. I think
it'd be fun. I love it when David LaFell does portraits where he puts himself in these really cool hats. And,
yes.
All the portraits that I have are beautiful, but they're all very, they're regular portraits. And I think it'd be fun to put on a wig or a hat or, do something fun.
Yes, that would be very nice. Yes, I like having artistic license. I think that's I'm a realist, but I'm a realist with artistic license.
All right, I'm ready. I have my wig.
Yes, excellent.
Okay, there we are. You see it?
Oh my gosh, yeah, that's right. That's from the Williamsburg conference.
Yes, it is.
Well, if we do that, we'd have to do maybe a little bit of makeup, just a little bit of stage makeup to balance.
Yeah, maybe a lot of makeup would help.
Yeah, a little bit. Like think Gilbert Stuart, George Washington. Just a little bit of rouge. I think that would be fantastic with a landscape in the background.
I like to have fun.
Yeah. Well,
we had fun at the FACE conference, didn't we?
I really love that. That was a lot of fun. Yes, and I enjoyed how people went outside and painted the city as well. They didn't just stay inside the hotel.
Well, we're scheduled for November in Williamsburg again. We were going to do it in Baltimore, but we had to change it from last year, canceled it. And so we're hoping, fingers crossed, we're going to be able to do it in November, but we don't know yet.
Right. Oh, I will be there whenever it's happening.
It's, what I think is neat about it is some young man came up to me and he gave me a gift of a palette that he had made. Mm-hmm. And I wish I remembered his name off the top of my head. And he said, I've never been in a place where I could actually go up and meet these people and sit down with them for a drink and pick their brains. He said, there's other places you can go, but they're too big and they tend to be cliquey. And he said, this is really nice because it's not a giant crowd and you really get to know, you sit down with iconic painters like you and just get to know them. We were all sitting around in the bar. That was fun.
Yes, you do create a very good welcoming atmosphere at your conferences. And what I also like as being a presenter at your last two, from the artist point of view, the conferences are incredibly inspiring. The buildings, I remember that Al Capone suite, people were calling it in Miami, you know, with the
Oh yeah.
feeling like, and then I went downstairs and everyone was at the party and it felt like I was in the Stanley Hotel in The Shining because it was empty. And I just got all these ideas for art. And then Williamsburg was this amazing museum town. And it was very stimulating as opposed to just staying at like a Hyatt or something, you know, a business center.
Well, we try very hard to pick places that have a good aesthetic. It's harder and harder as it grows, but that's why we picked Williamsburg. That's why we picked the old Biltmore in Miami. They're just, you know, you walk into these places and you're in a piece of living art.
Yeah. Yeah. It's very, very memorable. You know, it'll definitely be inspiring a lot of art to come. And I agree. I love to talk to people at the bar and pick their brains. It's really...
Even though you're a teetotaler, you were drinking tea.
Yes, I made a rule. I just go around with my own teacup and I bring my own tea maker to my room because the hotels never make the tea the way I want. And I love wine. I like wine tasting, but tea is above wine for me. So, and I try to stay up with everyone and I want to hear everything. So I try to stay up as late as I can and talk to everyone I can. So tea is why I can do that.
Yeah, that's fair. I like the fact that you carried your little porcelain teacup, flowered teacup with you. I have a picture of that somewhere.
Yeah, that was a fantastic time.
Well, it's you know, these things have become big giant families. Everybody gets to know each other. It's really fun.
Yes.
I love that little spot of blue on the edge there by the cheek. What a difference that made. That's what David LaFell would refer to as creating air.
Yeah, creating space, creating air. Yeah, that's what we're trying to do. I mean, we're trying to get likeness. We're trying to balance all these different things. And then we have in our heads all these different painters and old masters and our dreams and things of paintings we want to make, and they're all swirling around, and then we can only put so much of it down on each portrait. And so it's a little exciting to see what makes its way onto the canvas and what doesn't every time. And yeah, I put that blue there because this is a lot of blue in this picture, and I'm a big believer in atmospheric coloring. Like I think things are a color, but they get just as much color from their surroundings through reflected light. And so I look for those transitions.
Well, and when you get those reflections, when I first started painting, I couldn't see reflected light. People told me about it. I just couldn't see it. And then, it just takes a while to kind of train your brain to understand these things.
It's absolutely true. There's a good book called The Science and Practice of Drawing, I believe, by Harold Speed. He's a turn of the century author that a lot of students read at ateliers, and I recommend the book by Harold Speed. He says that he remembers walking into the National Gallery in London and seeing Turners, and then he left, and then all of a sudden he saw the London skyline like a Turner painting, and it was this transformative experience because before he saw Turner, he had no idea that he could see that way, and then Turner showed him how to see. In this case, I suppose color and edges and
right? So it's so true. I of course have a background in the broadcast industry. I was at a radio convention, and we had gone out to dinner for an early dinner, and we were walking down the street in Boston, and the sun, that orange afternoon sun, was slamming the red brick buildings with this glowing orange light, and the clouds were lit up like firecrackers or something. They're just beautifully orange. And I said to these people, look over there, look at that light. And they looked at me like, they said, what light? It's just light. And they looked at me like I was from Mars. Yeah. But once you start painting, you see the world differently.
Indeed. Yeah, that's actually one of the harder things about learning painting is to see the difference between color and value. It has something to do with camouflage and the way plants sometimes disguise themselves to either be seen or to not be seen when we want to go pick fruit and things like that. And so color is it's almost unnatural the way artists have to learn to see, but it's very rewarding when you get
it sure is. Hey, if you guys are enjoying this, hit the like button if this is inspiring you to paint. Hit the like or heart button, or hit the share button so other people will discover this. Someone said they lost the sound, but I think it's just them. Has anybody else lost sound?
I hear you loud and clear.
Yeah, I hear you loud and clear too. So what we're going to do is we're going to stop down in a couple of minutes, Teresa, because I want to make sure we have time to see your studio.
Absolutely.
That it's amazing to me how much form has changed. If somebody were to look at the repeat on this and go to the very beginning and see this, and then take a look at it where it is now, the form has changed dramatically.
Yeah, I mean, in one way, I'm a slow painter. I can do alla prima, but I prefer to do about 3 layers on each painting. And with the paintings being so big, I can easily spend 9 hours a day on something. So it is rewarding to hear that you can see a difference.
Oh yeah,
Short amount of time.
yeah. Well, you go back and look at the replay, you'll see.
Yeah. Yeah, each stroke. That's the thing about oil painting. It's like unless you do a little bit of glazing, like I've been showing here, you do obliterate what came before, and so you have to choose your marks very carefully at these later stages to make sure.
So on a big painting like this one that you're doing, how much time will that ultimately take you? Weeks, months, years?
I tell people 6 months I'll have it done by, and then part of the reason is because as you'll see, I have a lot of paintings going on in my studio at once. I can do maybe even 12 at once, and so I'll rotate days, and so that allows me to have time to see the work and digest it before I go back in. But
You need to get separation from your work once in a while.
You do, but most importantly, you need to let it dry if you're going to layer, and so I can let things dry for a week in between layers, which is ideal, or sometimes longer.
That's nice. Okay, we're going to make you quit painting and come back on camera, and then we're going to see your studio.
Absolutely.
This is fabulous. I am so impressed. Do it. Zoom out of that so we can see it. Oh, there we go. Good.
Here, I'll zoom out. I can actually zoom out a little further.
Oh, that's okay. That's fine.
Angle. That.
Very nice. Now, while you got that shot, I just want to point out to everybody the jars of pigments. Teresa makes her own paint. That's how she gets a lot of the vibrancy. You want to talk about that at all?
Sure. I have a little bit of a pigment museum going on here. This is a 17th century Dutch cabinet I bought at some point in Holland, and I've been proceeding to stock it with historical and modern colors. And these are all colors I use in my work. Some of them are a little too historical, such as orpiment and lapis lazuli. They're not really practical to use on a daily basis, but I use them every once in a while if I want to make a kind of ode to an old master. So I have a piece I'm working on that's going to have a copy of a stolen Rembrandt from the Isabella Stewart Gardner, the Christ on the Sea of Galilee. So I'm using all historical pigments for this copy.
Oh, wonderful.
This is nice to have them. And sometimes pigments run out, so I just like to have a big supply for my life.
Okay, we need to see your studio, Teresa.
Alrighty. All right, I'm just going to turn slowly.
Okay.
So that's the pigment cabinet. And it is stock full. And
I love to use antiques to make a studio because it just makes the aesthetic of the studio feel so much better. Yeah. Okay, stop there so we can see that. Oh, that's lovely.
That Rembrandt copy. I was very intrigued that it had been stolen and never found. And so it's going to be my ode to the stolen Rembrandt in the Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum. So it's just locked in. So it's an original painting with a Rembrandt hidden in it. And so I'm having to do a seascape and make it up. And this is one of my narrative pieces.
Oh, you got a lot going on.
It's a take on the Salome and St. John. So she's holding a shark's head. taken from the sea. Here's more big paintings. I haven't really got too much done on the huge ones, so these are my small ones still. But I just like a lot of color. I like multi-figure. I'm influenced by Gustav Klimt and John Singer Sargent and just old masters in general. So sometimes I like to put a lot of elements in my pieces, but I don't want to give up rendering the way Gustav Klimt did. And so this is my take on it. And
that's fabulous.
Behind, I have a very large, this is the 10-footer, one of them started, but there's a tree in there that I used to play in when I was 4 years old, and it's still alive. And it looks like a big crab with a mouth and a cyclops eye. And so I've been studying it at different times of year. And so it's the tree of life. And then there are some sharks, and there is Eve picking an apple from the tree. She's just been put in. So I'm very slowly working on these things. These are just passion projects. They're not commissions. And my commissions have been coming first. So I kind of like to labor slowly on things and deliberately. And then I have Old Man in the Sea over there. I don't know if you can tell.
I love that.
Little shark in the background.
Uh-huh. Now, let me see the portrait to the right of that.
Sure. This one?
Yeah.
I feel like I should go out and bring these forward, maybe.
Well, we don't have a lot of time, but that's good. We can
that was a demo I did for class, so I'll be doing more, but it's
see, that's the kind of portrait you should do for me, is put me in an outfit like that.
All right.
I like that. I need a crown. I don't have a crown.
It's Middle Eastern inspired, so he's got a kind of like a sheikh's outfit on. We
can have Mustafa in Egypt send us some costumes.
I would love that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh. I'm very inspired by Sargent when he went off to other countries and brought back clothing and then incorporated it into his work. I think that's exciting. So
okay, zoom out, give us a wide shot, and this is really fabulous. Bravo. It's very exciting.
Thank you.
Very exciting.
Cool.
All right. Come back on camera. Say goodbye.
All right. Goodbye.
Well, it's not just goodbye. Teresa, this has been fabulous. I think you've inspired a lot of people. I know you've inspired me. I am a big fan of your work, and I think that you're going to historically become very important in the art world. I would encourage anybody who can commission a painting or who would go to our website or her galleries and own a painting. My gut level feeling is that those paintings are going to increase in value 100-fold, maybe 1,000-fold over time, but they're going to be historically important no matter how you say it. And I just love the fact that you've got your own style, your lifestyle. It's a great package. You're a great marketer, whether you do it for that reason or not. I think it's more in your soul, but that's really cool. Thank you for being with us today. If you guys like this, please share it. Teresa's website, I want to make sure I do that. And it is teresaoaxaca.com. And now it's OAXACA. You can take a screenshot of that, but go visit it. And Teresa's got a couple of videos out from one of my competitors. Go buy those and support her in any way you possibly can. Teresa, thank you so much for being here today. And we're going to be watching you.
Thank you so much, Eric. Thanks for having me on.
All right. And we'll see you at the FACE conference.
Yes. I look forward.